Welcome back to Parks Place, where I just ask you to park, pull up, and we'll talk about it. I want to welcome you back for episode 4. I hope this one finds you, or find you find it interesting. It's basically from when I did my time in the gang unit with the Dallas Police Department, and this episode is called "Blood Ties: The Gang Life." So I want to focus on gangs, my dealings with them and working with them, and just intelligence information I gathered while working in that particular unit with the Dallas Police Department. Before I get into the Dallas police aspect of it, if you guys remember when I first started my podcast here, in my background, I told you I worked for the Texas Department of Corrections, and that is my first taste or dealings with gangs. So initially, I dealt with prison gangs. It wasn't the same as here in Dallas, and basically what I mean by that is my job was not totally to focus on gangs while working in a prison. It just so happens that gangs happen to be in prison. So my focus was not gathering intelligence on the prison gangs or seeing who's in them and seeing what they're going to do, this, that, and the other. So that wasn't my sole focus with dealing with gangs while working in the prison system. They would just happen to be part of the community there in the prison. So you probably asked the question, what gangs did I deal with or come across while working in the prison system? Gangs like the Mexican Mafia, Texas Syndicate, Aaron Brothers. There was also a clique called guys would have wood tattooed on their bodies, chest, or wherever, and that is short for peckerwood. So I believe, if I remember correctly, I don't know if it was a spinoff of the Aaron Brothers or Stair Step or whatever. I don't know what it's called. But it's kind of rare with those. I've seen a couple on the streets, and to be honest with you, I've seen one here working with the current department that I'm with now when I first started working for them, which has only been a couple of months ago. Um, and then you have the traditional Bloods and Crips, and I think I'll get into that a little bit, but I'll kind of touch on it here in a minute. And then you have what we call Tango Blast. Basically, it's a prison gang, but also local street gangs. When they go to prison, if you want to call it a graduation or whatever you want to call it, they upgrade to what they call Tango Blast, which is predominantly a Hispanic gang. I have seen some whites in that particular gang, not many, but I have seen at least one or two in my career that were affiliated with Tango Blast. Now, one thing about the Tango Blast gang, the prison gang, they can come from different sets or cliques from the streets. So you may have people that were rival gang members on the streets in the Hispanic gangs, but when they get to prison, they just basically unite as one. And I worked with the state for about 4 years. And like I said, I didn't deal with just strictly gangs; they were just part of their being in the prison. Basically, at least on death row, anyway. When I worked death row, they were kind of segregated, and what I mean by that is they either kind of lived on the same cell block area, and they were pretty much a lot. I know definitely the Mexican Mafia. They were definitely all pretty much in one location, meaning you may have some that was on the first row, second row, and third row. There were like 3 tiers, if you want to call it, within a cell block, and so they were mostly together and they would wreck together. So when we pulled them out to recreate, it would only be the Mexican Mafia. And hence, with any other gang, there would be just that particular gang, and was just strictly on death row. But out through the general population, you're going to have gang members floating around, just throughout the unit in different areas. But any gang on death row, most of those guys are on the same cell block and kind of housed next door to each other per se, but they're kind of all in one area. So when you walk in the cell block, you kind of know, hey, well, I'm coming on the Mexican Mafia or Texas Syndicate, things of that nature. Now, when I was working for the Dallas Police Department, I ended up getting in the gang unit probably about 4 or 5 years when I was on the department. I had only been on 4 or 5 years. And when I got there, like I said, I didn't know what a gang unit was. So guy that asked me to apply for the position, he kind of briefed me on it, things of that nature. Once he briefed me, I said, okay, this sounds pretty cool. I'll do that. And another reason that I wanted to get in the gang unit is like it got me off of the particular area that I worked. I worked South Oak Cliff area. Well, you kind of want to work with the gang unit. You can work anywhere. You can go anywhere in the city. So you weren't confined to a particular geographical area. You can go anywhere in the city within Dallas. But there were numerous gangs throughout the city of Dallas. And I'm going to name them all. You know, I'll probably touch on one or two, and probably just the ones I had that I actually worked with, or gathered the most intelligence on, and became an expert with that particular gang. Um, so gangs throughout the city, of course, you know, some of the prison gangs that you actually run across them in, you know, either when they get out, you know, they may be clicked up with someone else, but you know, Texas Syndicate, I ran across some of those guys on the street, ABs, which is Aaron Brothers. You see those guys, you know, on the streets as well. Tongo Blast, of course. We dealt with some MS-13 guys when that kind of first hit the United States. Had some detectives. I can't remember her name. They worked in a gang unit. But there was like one or two that had a lot of intelligence on MS-13 when they first kind of popped up on the scene. Now, if you're kind of old school, you kind of know the Bloods and the Crips. You're going to have, you know, of course, the Bloods are going to be red, Crips are going to be blue. They're throughout the city, depending on the area. You're going to have different cliques of Bloods and Crips. Now, this kind of started when I was in a gang unit. They kind of got away from wearing the traditional colors per se. Now, you have some that still will do it, but they kind of went to neutral colors. I've seen them go to tan, you know, black, just a solid color. They may even go from a red or blue bandana to a green bandana, and it's still with the same click. So they changed the game up a little bit. I don't try to confuse you basically, and not try to be labeled as a gang member or be affiliated. Or they don't want to draw attention to themselves, but they still draw attention to themselves anyway. Um, And so, but you have different cliques within a Blood and a Crip set. And when I was working in the gang unit, about a couple years before I got out, they actually started intermingling. You know, you had Bloods and Crips in the same gang, and I just asked them, it's like, what are y'all doing? Are y'all a little confused? I mean, what's going on here? So they were actually intermingling into one clique, and it was rare. I did see it, but for whatever reason, that's what they were doing. So you kind of see where the gang thing is going. Um, and with the gangs in Dallas, like I said, I was in the gang for about 6 or 7 years. Uh, it was one particular gang that I just focused on, and that was per se by accident, to be honest with you. Because, like I said, when I first got in the gang unit, I got away from the Oak Cliff area, and not for any particular reason, but just I wanted to explore the city of Dallas, other sets as far as, you know, you got South Oak Cliff, you got Southeast, you got Northwest, North Central. So you got all, and then South Central. So you got all these different substations and subdivisions. So basically, what I was trying to do was, you know, get out of South Oak Cliff to, because, you know, some people knew me or this, that, and the other, but try to get into another area to where it's to gather gang information on other gangs in different locations other than South Oak Cliff. So what I found out real quick was, and when I say real quick, probably about a year or so, maybe even almost a year and a half, those other areas were pretty much sewn up by other gang members. The gang members, I'm sorry, by other guys that I work with. Guy I work with, BK, Norman Smith, who has since passed away. And then there's other guys. You know, they already had those areas on lock, basically. So I may run across somebody, start talking to somebody. Man, I just talked to Big Sweet. I just talked to BK, this, that, and the other. And I was like, man, they already know everybody. So I partnered up with a good friend of mine, and he was working East Dallas. So, and that's mostly where the Hispanic gangs are. And one gang that sticks out is initials ESH, which is East Side Homeboys. So he was working that particular gang. So we started riding together, and because I just wanted to get out of Oak Cliff and just get other intelligence and information on gangs elsewhere. And at the time, to be honest with you, I really didn't know of any gangs in the area. Just trying to make contact and gather intelligence in the Oak Cliff area. So one day I went in, and one of my supervisors, he's like, "Hey, Ed, you're down from you came from Oak Cliff, right?" I said, "Yeah, Sarge, I sure did." He said, "Hey, he was getting a complaint. I can't remember what the complaint was on, but he handed me some information, some pictures, and then some written documentation." He said, "Hey, we're having a problem with this little clique down in Oak Cliff, and they were called it's called DF Dub." And you may be thinking that was for worse. Well, that's how they throw you off. So DF Dub actually stands for down for whatever. So when I heard that, I'm like, okay, so they when it's down for whatever, it's like, okay, they down to do anything. They don't care what it is, they're down to do it. Another little clique that another little clique that I dealt with was Keystone Pope. Keystone Pope area was a blood set. Wasn't too many guys uh, in the gang that I ran across over in the Keystone Polk area. A lot of them probably were either locked up or had been killed by this time. I ran across a couple. I gathered some information on the Keystone Polk guys. But the biggest one that I really dealt with was down for whatever. And actually, that particular area was off of Camp Wisdom, down off of 75 in Chaucer area. And it's pretty much anything south of Camp Wisdom is kind of where they kind of hung out and hung out down there, mainly that Chaucer area. I would run across some off of Polk and Wheatland area. There were some apartments down there, all the way down to Wheatland and 35. They would go down that way. And then also just thought about this particular clique. They had a clique called Woodtown, and most of those streets down there had wood in it or whatever the case may be. Um, and so, but like I said, most of my information, intelligence came from the group down for whatever. And I'm gonna get more into them as I keep going here. Now, the gang life. What I Once I got in the gang unit and started working and gathering intelligence on gangs and the people the people that are in it. Because initially, when I ran across the guys from Dev Dub, to be honest with you, these guys were anywhere between 12 and 13, some young as 10. And so I knew right there, it's like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and tackle this gang, deal with this gang. And I knew it was going to take years for something to come to fruition. Basically, start arresting people, things of that nature. Um, so what I learned when I was in the gang unit, it's not like what you see on TV and or social media. It's a little bit different. It's you think of it one way, but it really ends up being something totally different. The TV, movies or whatever, they portray something, and it's not fully true. And if it's not fully true, then it's not the real deal. And so either when these guys get into this gang, this, that, and the other, then they think it might be what it's on TV. And then, and let me put a pin since I'm talking about that right there. And with these gangs and when they get in it, it's probably changed since I got out, but and that's the reason why I call it blood ties, the gang life. And with blood ties, normally it's blood in, blood out. You're going to get jumped in, and then the only way you're going to get out is you get locked up for life or death. And it's not going to be by someone else. If you're trying to get out of that gang, I mean, they can possibly take them out, for better lack of words. Um, and going back to what I was getting ready to say, I've when I started dealing with DF Dub, a lot of those guys were young. And when I say young, 12, 13, when I started making contact with them, they were literally in middle school. And that was a problem. They weren't going to school. So they're walking around, Chaucer area, in the apartments, hanging out, be honest, selling dope, and things like that. And so as I began to interact with them, because back then, it was a truancy thing. Hey, when you see somebody in, hey, why are you not in school? That's how my conversation started with them, knowing that they were gang members because I already had some intelligence on them. And it would just kind of build from there. Hey, why are you guys not in school? So they would give me their reasoning why they weren't in school, and then I start talking about the gang side of it. And I knew one of their friends had recently been killed. And when I say recently, this was back then. So this was early 2000s. I'm sorry, probably around 2008, 2009 timeframe. And so that gave me something to talk to them about other than the truancy. Although I knew they were truants, that led into, hey, do y'all know this guy here? Because I had the name. How do y'all know him? And that's how it started. And so basically, in the gang unit, when you come across somebody that is that you know to be in the gang, or you make contact with them and you start talking to them, and then they reveal that they are in the gang, then you get their information, name, age, date of birth, where they live, what school they go to, how old they are, what grade they're in, things of that nature, and then once we identify that they were in a gang or possibly in a gang, let's just say they weren't a gang member at the time, but they're hanging around the gang members. Well, we would classify them as an associate. So they would go on our gang file as an associate because at some point they're going to get jumped in. And on the flip side, they could just be lying, but you still have them as an associate because they can tell me they're not, they're not in the gang. They just hang with them, and then another gang officer may contact them a month or two later. Yeah, I'm clicked up with such and such. But once we get all that information, this is how we did it. Once we got all that information, we would take a picture of them, just the face and body area, and I ask them to throw it up. Well, if you don't know, when I say, well, hey, throw it up for me, let me see. I'm asking them to throw up. They're clicked, they're set. And so they would give me the hand sign. So I would take a picture of them throwing up the gang sign. And that would go into the documentation, into our database. And mostly dealing with juveniles, that information is not going to be released because it's a juvenile person that you're dealing with. But as they grow and get older, then you change that information. And during some of my conversations that I can remember from back then, then it kind of started. I ain't gonna say it did start bothering me with some of them, but just to make conversations like, why are you in the game? How come you're not in school? How come you're not in school? You're out here 12, 13, 14 years old and you're not in school. You're missing, important education at that age. And they would give all the different excuses, this, that, and the other. I said, well, there's nothing out here but trouble if you're not in school, because they were either selling dope or breaking into houses or doing something criminal. So and some of it was a family dynamic because when I did talk to some of them, it was a family dynamic thing where dad wasn't in the picture, mom wasn't in the picture, or both were not in the picture. And so with their homies, they may be like, okay, they felt that was their only family. And they may be sleeping from pillar to post. They'd be going to this person's house, that person's house, and this, that, and the other with other gang members. And the mom brings them in and let them stay, for a couple of days, or some just take them in until, either several things happen. They get locked up or um, killed or, or just hopefully get out of the game, is what I was kind of hoping. And along with that, it also comes with poverty. It kind of comes with it where nobody's, if it's just mom or if it's just dad or whatever the case may be. So that could be something for the poverty level or just the education aspect of it. That's what I kept pushing to them. You got to get in school. And then also identity. At that age, kids, they don't know who they are. They're looking, they're searching. And for whatever reason, they decide to, maybe the group that he's hanging out with, maybe they've been friends for years. I mean, as long as you can be 12 or 13, 14 years old. And then they develop or come up with their own clique. And that's how it starts as well. And then they decide, okay, if the particular area they live in, if it's a blood set or a crip set, then that's what they're going to go with. Um, so it can be that part of that. It can be a survival thing, and sometimes it can be peer pressure. But if you get some guys growing up together and they decide to develop or create their own clique, then that's what they're going to do, and then go into recruiting other young men that they come across. Now, could it be peer pressure to get them in, or they're just hanging around all the time and whenever they're going to do their little dirt, maybe that person doesn't go with them. Um, and then another thing besides the peer pressure, it's a respect and money thing. It's what I come to learn. They watch these movies and with the respect and the money aspect of it, and they think, oh, hey, this is going to be easy. We can do this, we can do that, and then when guns come into play, shootings start to happen, then the game changes. Not saying that they just back out of it, but the game changes, and some of them it becomes real, and some of them have met their demise. And what I've seen happen is when one of their members meet their demise, well, guess what? They want to retaliate. They want to go retaliate against the other clique that they had the issue with that just harmed their homeboy, homegirl, or whatever in the drive-by, went and shot somebody's house up. And let's just say nobody got hurt in the drive-by. Well, guess what? They still going to go retaliate. So it's just a never-ending cycle in this thing. And I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I've dealt with families. I've dealt with these young guys going through this stuff and dealing with it. Now, did some of them get out? Yeah, some of them probably did. But if you're not in school most of your middle school year, and you get ready to go to high school, and you go to high school and you're still not going to school, that's going to be a problem. You have no education, no sense about you to do certain things or be a productive citizen. Um, and I think I was kind of touching on it. Okay, why do they join the gangs, Parker? Why do they join the gangs? I was still trying to figure that out myself because my parents, they kept us busy. What I mean by that is we were athletes, so we were in one sport, we go to another sport, we go to the next sport, this, that, and the other. And so that's how we stayed out of trouble. We had some good role models. And what I mean by role models, I mean guys older than us from where I grew up. And so we mimicked them, but we were mimicking them in sports. Some big names that came out of where I grew up: Kenneth Davis, he went pro football. There's a Lance Jackson. There's so many more that I could name. That we emulated, that we wanted to be. And Kenneth Davis, I mean, he made it to the NFL. He played for the Buffalo Bills. Lance Jackson, he went to Texas A&M. Another good friend of mine, Albert Reese. He was a tight end for SMU. He played for the Washington Redskins. I'm real good friends with Albert, and I grew up with his brother. So, we're real close. So we had those role models and guys that were just a little bit older than us in high school. So we had that to look forward to, or we were dreaming to get to where they were going and what they achieved. And it's also broken homes. It plays a part in dealing with these guys, and not just the gang and the downfall, whatever. It was a predominantly black gang, and I'm going to touch on some other things here in a minute. It's a respect thing, it's a status thing, and sometimes it could, it's just my personal. It could be an adrenaline thing. Well, Parker, what do you mean by adrenaline thing? It just when they get that gun in their hand, they want to use it. They want to harm someone, or when they're doing their dirt, they want to have it on them just in case the person that they're trying to rob or harm, if they have a gun, and then if the other person has a gun, then they have their gun on them. Now you get into a situation, and who pulls out the gun first? Who shoots first? Who's the better shot? So like I said, it's just a never-ending cycle. And what I did in the gang, which I'm quite sure other guys did as well, is you always have. I don't want to say always. I call them a divine intervention. And what I mean by that is there's always going to be a door open to speak to these young men. You just got to listen for it. So I tried to talk to them as much as I could, to plant that seed in them. And, some took, some didn't. It's just the life that they choose, and they know what they're choosing. So money, drugs, jewelry, cars, something. And then and this is just my personal opinion again, it's like they think when they get into these gangs and then they're exposed to this money, the drugs, the jewelry, the cars, the young girls, women, whatever you want to call it, they think it's an automatic ticket to become a rapper, and then, and trust me, there's some in this Dallas area that's still out there. Um, so they think it's a automatic thing to become a rapper. Maybe they're trying to do something to write their rhymes, but if you're not in school and you can't put a noun and a verb together, you're gonna have a problem. So um, and I've seen a lot of them attempt to do that, and they're not rapping. So now let's get into the group that I kind of dealt with a lot while I was in the gang unit, down for whatever. Um, why did I focus on this gang? I think I touched on it a few minutes ago. I got intelligence from one of my sergeants to say, "Hey, I need you to check on this." And so that's what I did. I went down back to Oak Cliff area. That's where I was working. So I went down to 75 in Chaucer. They probably changed the name of those apartments probably about 100 times already since I left the department. So I went down there. I received some information on, like I said, from one of my supervisors. We're getting complaints. So it either had to be, these kids running around being truant. Not only that, they're getting into stuff while they are running around, doing stuff that they're not supposed to do. Um, so I began to make contact with them, start gathering intelligence, start gathering information. We made gang cards. Remember, Tori, a few minutes ago, we would take their picture, we'd take them throwing up their set, and we will put that in a gang file database. So, well, Parker, what does that mean when you put all this stuff in the database? This is what that means. It's like when you get pulled over and the officer takes your driver's license back and run your name, it's going to give all your information. It's going to give your driver's license information. It's going to let us know if you have any tickets, any warrants, things of that nature, and possibly take you to jail. Well, let's just say if I'm off one day and another gang officer comes across someone that just committed a crime, or they just truant, or whatever the case may be. And so we had, I don't want to say I'm a dispatcher, but we had someone back at the office that would say, "Hey, can you check this person for me in the gang file?" And we would give them the name, date of birth information, and they would say they'd run through the database, and it would pop up, and it would give us that person's information. Yes, somebody had contact with them, the other day. This is his name. He's a known, documented member, or he's an associate, is what they're going to tell us. And let's just say if that card is getting ready to purge out, meaning go out of the system, and that person is still claiming this particular gang, then guess what? We're going to do another gang card. And then time will start all over again. Um, so when I started getting this intelligence on DFW, um, I knew it was going to take years for something to come to fruition, for a better lack of words, meaning that this particular gang would do something of great harm to someone. And it ended up happening. And I got a call. I'll never forget, I was working a part time job at some apartments, I think off of Buckner. I can't remember where it was, it's been a while back. So, hey, I got a call on my cell phone, and one of my supervisors said, "Hey, there's a homicide." I wasn't in homicide, I was in the gang unit. So we've got a homicide down off of, I think it was Chaucer. I take that back. I'm sorry. It was not Chaucer. But there was a homicide off of Laurel Land, 35 in Laurel Land is what it was. So I said, "Hey, I'm on my way." So I left the job, the part-time job, and I went down that area. Basically, this is what happened. One of the gang members in DFW, and if I'm not mistaken, he was either 17 or 18 at the time. Well, there was a little party at this. It wasn't a club. It was like a teenage party. So this little plaza, they have the little businesses, and somebody rented out one of the rooms or something, and they had a party there. Well, one of the guys in this gang, DFW, um, got into it with someone. I think he got kicked out of the party, if I'm not mistaken, and decided to go to his vehicle and get his AR-15. And I think the little party was pretty much ending. But when he got kicked out and when he got his AR-15, he decided to go shoot up the club. So he's a good distance away from the club. So he starts firing this AR-15, aka what do you want to call it, chop. Well, there happened to be two young ladies. When I say ladies, two young ladies, I mean 13 to 16 years old, walking across the street from that particular party. So the guy in DFW was shooting toward the party. These two young ladies are walking across the street because they're leaving the party. Well, guess what happens? Young girl got hit with an ACAB, and it did not end well for her. She met her demise that night. So, and actually, this case made the first 48. A good friend of mine, Detective Court, this was his case. And so I go down there and start gathering information. I think I went to the apartments down off of Charleston because I got intelligence that something was going on over there, because of the young lady that was killed. I can't remember, but I went over to Charleston. And the young person that I was told in the gang that did it, I saw him. I couldn't arrest him because I didn't have enough. There was no warrant. There was nothing enough to put a warrant on him. And I put a bug in his ear. I said, "Hey, the detective may want to talk to you, so I'm going to call you if the detective wants to talk to you." And so, and actually, I think a good friend of mine, we were working together at the time, Walls. I think we were working together. And so Detective Quirk had the case, and he had called me. I was down in the gang. I was down in the office, and he said, "Hey, I need you to come up here." I said, "Okay, I'm on my way." So I get up there, and he said, "Hey, I got a suspect." And Quirk, he didn't know. I mean, and I'll explain that in a minute. So, but I think he heard he was in the gang. This particular guy. He said, "Hey, do you know this guy?" So I just got a nickname, and I said, "Wow, what's up?" He said, "He's my suspect in my homicide." He told me the nickname, and I almost fell over. Yeah, I was like, "What?" He's like, yeah. He said, "You know him?" I said, "Yeah, I know him." I said, "You need to talk to him. I can get him. I can get him up here." And Court kind of looked at me. He's like, "You can do what?" I was like, "Yeah, I can get him up here." He said, "No, no, no." He said, "Don't bother him right now." No, he said he was still gathering information on his case. I said, "No problem." I said, "Just let me know." And and I forgot how long it was. It could have been a good month or something. But once Court got his, the information that he needed enough of the warrant, um, he called me again. Like I said, I think it might have been a month, but I can't remember the time frame. So he said, "Hey, Parker, you remember you said you can get old boy?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You ready for me to bring him up?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." So, and I think me and my partner Walls, we went up to homicide. We was right at Cork's desk, and I think I called him from there. I think I called the guy from there, and I said, "Hey, man, this Parker, man." And actually, let me back up. I was I became the expert on this particular game, so much so that they gave me they gave me a street name, which I had no clue that they had done it because uh, they they called me 4020 on the street. They called me 4020. And so one day I ran across some guys. I was just talking to them because I don't like mess with them all the time. We'll sit there, we'll chop it up, and then they go on their way. And then sometimes if they've done something criminal, then I got to do what I got to do. And so we had that understanding. And so one of the kids ran back up, and when I say kids, probably 15 to 17 years old at that time. So he ran up to me, and said, "Hey man," he said, "You 4020?" I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You don't know?" I'm like, "No, what?" He say on the street they call you 4020. I'm thinking, I said, "Why in the world they call me 4020?" I looked down at my squad car, and guess what? That's my squad car number. So that was my nickname on the street. They called me 4020. And so, and I'm saying all that to say, and then I just remember, it just made me think about it. But when I called the person that Quirk was looking for, I called him. I said, "Hey, man," I called him by his nickname. I'm not going to say his nickname, but I called him by his nickname. And I said, "Hey, man, it's 4020. He said, "Hey, man, what's up?" I said, "You remember what I told you when I saw you the other night?" He said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "Hey, the detective needs to talk to you." And I said, "Where you at?" And I said, "You still willing to come in and talk to him, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, he told me he was getting some clothes for his kid. I think they were starting school or something like that. Mind you, this dude is only like at the time probably 18, no more than 19, but I think he was 18. He said, "Hey man, I'm walking by the mall." I said, "Redbird?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Tell you what, meet me right there. I'm on my way." I said, "Meet me at the Shell station. I'll be right there, 67." He said, "Okay." So me and my partner go down there, and he had a murder warrant. You know, and I didn't tell him he had a murder warrant, but I knew, court said, "Hey, I got this warrant." So I said, "I'll get it." So me and my boy go down there. Me and Walls, we go down to 67 in Camp Wisdom area. And sure enough, I get down there. I called him back because I didn't see him. I said, "Hey, man," I said, "It's 4020. Where you at, man?" He said, "Man, I'm walking that way. I'm walking." I said, "I see your car. I see your car." I said, "Okay, well, come on, man." So get him to the car. I said, "Hey, man, remember I told you the detective want to talk to you." I said, "You still want to go talk to him?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, "Hey, look, you get in the car. I got to put cuffs on you. I got to pat you down for weapons." I said, "It's routine. We got to do that with everybody." So, we did what we need to do. We pat him down, put the cuffs on him, took him to headquarters, got him in a room. Went up. I saw Quirk. I said, "Hey, Quirk, I got your boy over there in room such and such." Quirk looked at me and Walsh. He's like, "How did y'all do that?" So anyway, but this is the thing that I'm talking about. You have this, to me, he's a kid because he's no more than 18. Life is gone, and not just him. If you're going to do that, yeah, you deserve to go to jail. You deserve to go to jail for the rest of your life. But what about that 13, 14-year-old girl that was just leaving that party over some gang stuff, and she's never coming back because you decided that you want to take an AK and just shoot randomly, just at the building, not at the person that you had the issue with. Even that's still wrong, but you just randomly start shooting, and you kill this teenage girl for no reason. So yes, he deserved to be in prison for the rest of his life. And the point I'm trying to make is he's one of the ones I told, "Man, you need to be in school." I've told him this over and over and over again. And look what happened to him. Um, I don't know if he's still in prison. I have no clue. I don't know. But that's the life he chose of being a so-called gang member, whatever you want to call it. Hence the name DF Dub, down for whatever. So that young lady, or it could have been anybody, it could have been another person driving by. And when you part of a clique like that called down for whatever, then that's exactly what it means. You're just down for whatever. You're going to shoot up something just randomly. And the one thing they say to us in the line of police work, and when we go to the range or if we are involved in the shooting, we have to account for every round that's fired. He's not accounting for anything, for all the rounds that he's shooting. He's not accounting for anything. He's just randomly shooting, and I don't know if he's trying to build his rep up, or he probably didn't know he was gonna, well, my thing is he recklessly shot, intentionally, knowingly, and recklessly shot that AR downrange and killed this young girl. And so when stuff like that happens, I have no sympathy for you. The tears you cry, they mean nothing to me. My thing is for that victim and that victim's family. That's where my heartfelt condolences go to, because my thing is not only this gentleman here that decided to shoot, but if you're living that life, I used to tell them all the time, whatever they're doing, losing money or whatever the case may be, hey, chalk it up to the game. Chalk it up to the game, because you knew this was a possibility. You knew this was a possibility that you could kill somebody, whether it's the person you're looking for or an innocent bystander. So I have no sympathy for him. Hey, I hate it happened to you, but I've been telling you all these other years, get in school. But you know, my parents used to tell me hard head make a soft rear end, and that's the clean version of it. So when you make decisions like that and you do stuff like that, then you deserve what comes to you or whatever you get. You deserve that. So that's just my little 2 cents on it. So that one is one with that particular gang that stood out for me. Uh, like I said, that one made the first 48. And there was another one. And this one didn't make the first 48 because this wasn't a homicide or anything like that. But there was one of the gang members in DF Dub. Um, I think he had did some burglaries. Uh, I don't know if it was in the apartment complex down there or someone's house because he never would tell me and my partner at the time that I was riding with. And so we heard he got shot. Like I said, we try to mentor them as well. So it's not just out there just trying to do the criminal aspect. We try to mentor them as well. Some of those occasions are far few in between. But like I said a few minutes ago, I call them divine appointments. And basically, I try to do that when most of the time they were open to listen. And I try to plant as many seeds as I could. And the first thing was, hey, you guys need to get in school. So anyway, let me get to this particular story. Um, so I think he was doing some break-ins and something was going on with him. He was walking from what we were told, like I say, they wouldn't tell me and my partner. Um, from what we were told, because I think they were going to try to retaliate. And I think he couldn't have been no more than, at the time of the incident, probably 17-ish, 18-ish range. And mind you, I've been dealing with them since they were like 12 and 13. So I've been knowing them for years. And so that's why when I heard what happened, and I'm getting ready to get into that. When I heard what happened, me and my partner Walls, we went and checked on him where he was living. We had that type of relationship with these young kids. And we even told him, look, hey, when it come down to business, sometimes y'all gonna beat us. And then sometimes, we gonna get y'all and you're gonna have to go to jail. That's just part of it. But you also need to listen to what we're trying to tell you and teach you as young men that, hey, what we're telling you is kind of for your better good. So, but anyway, he was walking from what we were told. So I don't know how true this is. And I have my now that I'm starting to remember some of it now, but he said that he was walking um, through by the apartments right there off of 75 in Chaucer, the ones in the middle. I can't think of the name of them, but it's the ones in the middle, the big ones, the ones in the middle. That he was just walking around. I think it was a little creek, something right there. He was walking on the street, and somebody started shooting. Well, he got shot on this side of the face. Luckily, he wasn't killed. Um, but the bullet took out his eye. He completely, it took it out. And so we went to go see him where he was living. After we found out he was there, we saw some other gang members and some of the females that associated with this particular gang. And they said, hey, him and his mom, they moved over to such and such, and can't remember the name of the park, but I know where it's at, off of 20. I think it's 20 in Wheatland. So we went over there and we went to go see him. And his mom was there. I think that was the first time we had ever met his mom. His mom was there, and we said, hey man, we just come to check on you. And and we now, to us, he's a victim because this happened over there in the hood when where their little area was. And so now me and my boy, we try to find out who did it so we can go get them. Not that we have ties with them because we've been knowing since they were 12 or 13. Now he's a complainant. He's been shot. So now we're trying to find the person that did it to arrest them. But their mindset is not like that. And that's why I was saying a few minutes ago, from what we were told of the story, because I really think they were looking to retaliate. So he's already blind in one eye. He could see out the other eye. And I end up seeing him again, but it was years later. I was in homicide by this time. And somebody had a case and his name came up. I'm like, who? It's like, Parker, you know him? I was like, yeah, I know him. And so whatever the case was, they needed to talk to him, but he was in Lou Sterrett. I said, yeah, I know him. And by this time, they told me, say, hey, he's blind. I'm like, what? I said, I know he doesn't have sight in one eye. I said, no, they say he's totally blind now. I was like, oh my God. So anyway, I go up to Loose and I pull him out. And sure enough, as the jailers are bringing him out to where I'm at, his hand is on the shoulder of one of the jailers. And I didn't say anything. And I asked the jailer, I put him out there like this, don't, say anything. So as he's coming in, um, I'm not gonna call his nickname. I'm not gonna call his nickname, but I called his nickname um, when they had him there. And he's like I say, he's totally blind now. So when I called him by his nickname, he's like, 4020, is that you? I was like, yeah, man. And so I told him what was going on. I say, look, man, I need to take you over to our office and talk to you. Of course, he was not involved in a homicide because he's totally blind. But whatever the case was, I took him over to homicide, um, got him up to one of our interview rooms, put him in the interview room. So we just got to chopping it up, about, back in the day, because at this time he's grown. I think he was in his 20s. And so, and I asked him, I said, man, I was like, I knew you got shot and I knew you lost vision in the one eye. I was like, what happened, to your other eye? He said, 4020, man. He said, y'all remember, you remember when y'all came out to see me? I was like, yeah. He's like, man, about a couple of months after that, he said, I lost sight in the other eye. He said, when the bullet went through here and took out this eye, of course, it kept traveling. And I guess so much damage had come to it that he lost vision in the other eye. So what are you trying to say, Parker? This is what I'm trying to say. You have, when he got shot, couldn't have been no more than 18, 19 years old. You blind in one eye. And what I really think happened on that one was he was breaking into somebody's house and a homeowner shot him. That's what I think happened, because that's some intelligence that we got. That's what I think happened. And so now whatever he did as he banging, now he's blind because of the dirt that he was doing, and he ended up getting shot. And and I'm thinking, okay, well, he's gonna be okay. Yeah, he has a problem because he can't see out of one eye. And he told me, he said, after we left, he said anywhere between 3 to 6 months after we had seen him, he lost vision in the other eye. So now here this young man is 20 some odd years old and can't see, and probably could have been prevented. But that's what you get. That's the residual checks that you get in this gang life. That's why we try to tell these young guys it's not worth it. And my saying is, if you about that life and you are in that life, you're going to end up in one or two places. One is in the prison, and one of my old school sayings that I used to say, you're going to be out there pushing up daisies. You're going to be in the ground, deceased in a casket. So one doing time, if he is still doing time, one has lost his vision completely. And once I got out of the gang unit and retired, there's no telling how many more have died because of being in the gang life. And there's another person involved in this particular gang that's still, if you want to call it relevant to this day, that's out there. He's a local rapper in the Dallas area. And his name has come up in a murder that happened about 2 or 3 years ago. Let's just say he's affiliated with the DFW. And I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with that. And my whole thing is, he's in his 30s now. And he's caught up in this deal that's probably not going to end up well for him if evidence keeps coming out on him. So the gang life really doesn't just lead to a whole lot that's positive. Now, are there some guys that get out of it? Yes, they are. Have I tried to help guys get out of it? Yes, I have, and try to lead them on the right path. I can't. It's that old thing. You can lead a horse. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I can give you all the advice that I can and that I know to help you do something. But if you don't want to take the advice and you don't want to do it, then that's on you as an individual. Um, so that's my little rant about DFW in this particular area. Now, what's another thing that I want to talk about this gang life? Blood ties. Working 6 to 7 years as a gang officer with the Dallas Police Department, the one thing I've noticed with particular gangs, there's a difference in what you'll see what I'm getting in a minute. Like I've dealt with Hispanic gangs, so I just hadn't dealt with black gangs. I've dealt with Hispanic gangs, and I've dealt with black gangs. And I think I mentioned East Side Homeboys earlier. So I had a lot of dealings with them. Mainly my partner that I was riding with back then. His name is Oscar Carrasco. We was real good friends. Um, that was his baby. The East Side Homeboy. That was his baby. That, like I said, we were just riding together. I would just want to get out of Oak Cliff for a while. And then not only the East Side Homeboys, but and I'm getting at the difference between Hispanic gangs and black gangs. And like I said, this is just my personal opinion on it. It's all about respect. With any gang, it's about respect. But what I noticed or the difference between a Latino gang and a black gang is the Latino brothers are more, how can I say it? They are prideful in the gang that they're in. And what I mean by that, they're gonna let you know that they clicked up. They're gonna let you know that they clicked up. Most of them are not gonna hide. Most of the ones that I've dealt with, they've told me, whatever clique they're in, especially Tango Blast. They wear that flag pridefully, and they're gonna let you know who they are and what they stand for. And if I'm not mistaken, I've only ran across a few MS-13s when I was in the gang unit. Like I said, that was early to mid 2000s. And if I'm not mistaken, they had to let you know that they were MS-13, and they let you know with pride. And they will throw up their gang sign in a minute, and that's most Latino gangs. And black gangs, oh man, come on now. They're gonna dance around it. Man, I'm not this, I'm not that, and this, that, and the other. And they have all the signs of being in that particular gang/clique. They have all the signs of it. And I would tell the black gangs that I run across every time they start saying that, I was like, you know what, man, you guys playing around. I said, I got more respect for the Latino gangs I run across because they man up. They let me know who they are and what they are about. And I respect that. And they gave me the same respect. And if I said, hey, you got to go to jail, I ain't going to say all of them because, some will run, and this, that, and the other. But they like, hey, they wore that flag with pride. My black brothers, it's like, if and this is just my philosophy. If you're going to be in it, be in it. You might need to take a lesson for the Latino brothers where they take pride in it. That's what they're doing. My job is just to police it. If you're showing me that you're in a gang, meaning you're wearing the clothes, I've seen pictures of you before. Don't sit there and lie to me that you're not in a gang. My saying is I was born at night, not last night. So that's the differences that I've seen between the two gangs. That the Latino brothers, they're gonna wear that with pride, and most of the black gangs I come across, it's like it's like pulling teeth. No, man, I'm not this, I'm not that, and I know the telltale signs of lying, and so that's where I get. I respected the Latino gangs more than I did the black gangs because you dabbling in it, and when I say you dabbling in it, you playing. You just saying that you want to be in the game, but you want to let nobody know that you are in the game. So and you're not fooling anybody. You're not fooling anybody. Now, this little part right here, I want to deal with my parents, guardians, whatever you want to call it. If it's not your kid or whatever, I want to deal with you guys because I want to let you know what to look for if you have teenagers, even if you have daughters. I want to tell you what to look for um, if you kind of wondering if your child is in a gang. Okay, nowadays they're not really calling them gangs. They'll call them cliques. They're calling my hood. I'm just representing my hood. All this stuff. They're gonna call it everything but a gang. But let me tell you something. It's still a gang. And if you have school age kids, parents, if you have school age kids, this is my advice to you. You need to check their social media sites. You need to know usernames. You need to know passwords. And let me back up. These are teenagers, right? They go into middle school and high school. You need to know the social media sites, username, password. If they have backpacks, especially if they still in middle school, go through them backpacks. Go through them backpacks, look in their notebooks, look for drawings, look for names of stuff, like whatever the clique is, wherever you live. If your name of your neighborhood is in something and it has another name added to it, 9 times out of 10, Pookie in a clique. 9 times out of 10. Check their notebooks, check their clothing, because nowadays they're not going to wear the traditional red. They're not going to wear the traditional blue. May they have, they may have it? Yeah, they might. They might have it. It's probably still at least going to be a blood set or a Crip set. Now, what they're doing is they're going to neutral colors. They may have a green bandana. They may have a black bandana. I think I said earlier, they may wear khaki pants, white t-shirt. They may wear they may set it off different. If Pookie and Ray Ray got on the same clothes, that's a red flag. Look in their notebooks, see what they're writing in their notebooks, books at school. Look in those backpacks. Look in the backpacks and see what's going on. And if they're failing school, look at that. Find out what's going on. If you had an A B student before, even an A, B, and C student before, now they're flunking and not going to school, that's a sign. That's a sign. And then not only that, they started this when I was in the gang unit. They would change the shoestrings. They would, you may not even notice it. The shoestrings may be green. They didn't got on the money clip. So the shoestrings may be green. They may just go to a different color. 9 times out of 10, that's a sign. So watch that. Like I said, add neutral colors. When they take pictures, what kind of hand signs are they throwing up? Literally before I started recording this, a friend of mine was speaking at, I think it's Roosevelt's high school baccalaureate, whatever it was. He took a picture with, I think about 3 or 4 of the guys. In my opinion, looked like they throwing up gang signs. I could be totally wrong, but 3 of them had the same hand sign throwing up. So look at their pictures. If you got access to you should have access to their phone. If you have a phone, look at their pictures. Are they throwing up, or him is your son and daughter and then the other friends? Are they all throwing up the same hand sign? I can tell you right now, they're gonna lie to you. Oh, mama, daddy, that's just, that's what this means. No, 9 times out of 10, they're lying. Because what they're doing nowadays is just something to get away from the traditional Crips and Bloods type thing. They don't call them gangs anymore. They call them cliques. They call them sets. They talk about their hood, my neighborhood, and this, that, and the other. That's how they're going to do it. Now, here's some legal stuff on it. Now, let me back up, because some of y'all are probably thinking, why are you going through their stuff? Number one, that's a kid. Number two, it's my house. Number three, if Pookie and Ray Ray dealing dope and his rivals know where they live, who else live there? Bullet don't have no name on it. When they shoot up the house, you in there. Lord forbid if you have an infant or a toddler in there. So that's why I say check their stuff. Because believe me, my oldest daughters, when they live when growing up, I went through their stuff. Not all the time, but I want to see what you're doing, what you're talking about in your notebook, because that's what's going to tell the telltale sign. It's going to be too late when a house gets shot up. It's going to be too late when someone other than Pookie or Ray Ray that's in the house gets killed in the house, and it's a drive-by. Now his rivals know where you live. So what are you going to do? You going to pack up and move? You taking Pookie and Ray Ray with you? Because guess what? They're going to find out where they stay. They're going to find out where they stay. And I'm quite sure if they're only 16, 17 years old, they living with you. So don't get caught up in not my baby. I've heard that so many times. Not my baby. My baby wouldn't do this. My baby wouldn't do that. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, your baby did this. Don't believe everything your child tells you. I got a 12-year-old now. It's like, okay, yeah, I believe her, but it's like, you know what? Hey, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But once I see that you're lying, that's a problem for me. Now, here's a true story. It's working Oak Cliff area. And this is why I'm telling you this. There was a lady, I got a call, and I answered the call. And the lady was having a problem with her son. Could have been no more than 14, 15 years old. She said she couldn't discipline this, that, and the other because she'd go to jail and all this other stuff. And he's doing what he want to do and all it, and he won't listen, he won't mind, he don't go to school, this, that, and the other. So I'm listening to her. And I said, who told you couldn't whoop him? Well, if I whoop him, they're gonna take me to jail, ma'am. I don't know who told you that. I said, as long as that child doesn't have you hit him with a baseball bat across the head, broke his arms, broke his legs, penal code said you can tear that rear end up. And I said, you want to whoop him right now? I said, I'll stay here with you and watch you whoop him. And he looked at me like, man, you crazy. No, if she gonna whoop you, she gonna whoop you right here. This is why I'm telling you guys this. This same kid, when the mom left the house, she had a deadbolt on the outside of her door and the inside of her door. So when she leave to go to work, she deadbolts it. When she go in the room to go to sleep, she deadbolts it so he won't come into her room. I'm sorry, but I'm not living like that. So if this is what you want to nurture, then you better nip it in the bud. And so I couldn't believe that was going on. And she's like, officer, I'm afraid of him. I don't know what he's going to do. Mind you, she had a deadbolt on the outside of her door in her house. She's a prisoner in her own home. That kid was running the house. That kid was running the house. And that's another thing, parents. Don't be scared to tap them on the rear end. You better start doing it when they're young. Because when they get 12, 13 years old and they boys, it's a little too late. Now, if they turn out fine, hey, more power to you. But don't be like this lady. Deadbolt on the inside and outside of her door. Now, I hear you, Parker. I hear you talking about this. It did not penal code, but I hear you talking about this gang stuff and all this other junk. And you probably just saying that. About what the kids wear and what they do, what constitutes a gang, this, that, and the other. Let me help you out. If you got a pen and paper, write this down. Texas Penal Code 71.01. It says where three or more persons having a common identifying sign or symbol or an identifiable leadership who continuously or regularly associate in the commission of criminal activity. A common identifying sign. What does that mean? If they throwing it up and it's common and it's identifying, guess what? They're in a gang. A symbol. If they have some type of symbol that they all have, that they all wear, whatever the case may be, same colors, they're in a gang. If they have an identifiable leadership, the shot caller, it's a gang. And if they are associating in a commission of criminal activities, breaking into folks' houses, selling dope, selling guns, it's a gang. And if you're shaking your head, hey, fine. You're going to find out when you go down to Loose Sterrett. That's when you're going to find out when you go down to Loose Sterrett, and it's going to be the state of Texas versus. That's when you'll find out when the truth is really going to come out. Then, on top of that, when it gets really complicated, then engaging in organized criminal activity, they slap that RICO on them, Racketeering Influenced by Corrupt Organizations Act, which is a federal charge. So you gotta be nosy as a parent. You gotta be nosy, because I'm sorry, but this is just me. Number one, I'm not going to live like a prisoner in my house. I'm not putting no deadbolt lock on the outside of my door. I'm not putting a deadbolt lock on the inside of my door. I'm the parent. That person's the child. But what I've seen is some of these guys that are in these gangs are also paying bills, providing dope to the parent or parents. So what do you think the parent or parent's going to do? You think they're going to cut that off? This is the seriousness of dealing with gangs. They just changed it up a little bit. So I implore you to check on your kids, get involved in their lives, be nosy, find out what they're doing. Don't wait until it's the state of Texas versus, and then you find out what's going on. Don't have that mindset. Don't have blinders on. Don't have that mindset of not my baby. Yes, it could be your baby. It could be your baby. Don't think that just because it's your kid that you're raising an angel, because you're probably not. Mine sure weren't perfect. Did they get in trouble like that? No. Because you have to get involved. Look for the signs. Look for colors. If they switch, if they're not wearing red all the time, and that's another thing they're going to say, oh, that's just my favorite color. That's a sign. They're going to do everything to deny it. And this episode is Blood Ties, the gang life. Normally it's blood in, blood out. You don't see that too much these days when I say blood out. Normally they seriously harm someone to where they're not living anymore. So just want to get this information out to you, just my time in the gang unit, what I've actually seen, and not just somebody talking. And when I talk about parents and what I think you guys should do, I'm not saying it just to be saying it. I've seen it. I've seen parents that just deny. And yeah, it's Pookie and Ray Ray that's doing this. And then they want to blame the police for Pookie and Ray Ray selling dope, selling guns, and this, that, and the other. So, and like I said, I'm not going to drop names. I'm not going to drop nicknames and this, that, and the other, but I'm being proved right. Because like I said, there is a case going on in the city of Dallas with one of my guys from DFW. Like I say, he's in his 30s. So get involved with your kid's life if you're not. If you are involved, stay involved. Just get a little bit more nosier, if that's a word. Go through the backpacks. Talk to your kids. Because you don't want to wait. You don't want to wait until it's too late. And what I mean by that is bullets flying through your house, people knocking on your door that, who you here to see? They're here to see Pookie and Ray Ray. Because they hadn't paid their supplier or they done lost some product. They don't care where they get their money from. They don't care what happens to the next person, but they're going to do something. They're going to retaliate in some kind of way. So this is things that I've actually seen, I've worked on and dealt with in the courts, in the streets. So it's real. So the parent side the little segment that I talked about, take that to heart. If you don't do it, you need to start. because, like I said, you don't need to wait until the last minute and it's too late. So I think I'm going to end it right there, guys. And I don't know when I'm gonna get the next one out. Hopefully, pretty soon. I'm going to edit this out and get it to you guys as quick as I can. And like I said, when you see it, it's going to be on the YouTube platform. Just ask you to like, share, and subscribe to the video on YouTube, and trying to get the algorithm thing going there, get it up, and get more views and likes and subscribers to keep this thing moving. So I appreciate if you would definitely do that and definitely share it. I'm trying to keep the time down on them so that they're not horribly long. So that's the next thing I'm trying to work on, is trying to keep them down a little bit. Just let me know how you feel about it. You know, how it's going as far as the subject matter. Like I said, if there's anything you need me to talk about or want to touch on, hey, let me know. Pull up, we can park. We're going to talk about it, okay? You guys be good. See you on the next one.